Gators Breakdown episode 67 is ready to go. Malik Zaire has chosen Florida and makes his way onto campus this week. It's a hot button topic, and we have you covered here on Gators Breakdown. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. And my two co-hosts, we got Joey and we got Bill back together. The triumvirate is back together. You can find Joey on Twitter at JoeyV_SEC Sports and Bill Sykes on Twitter at RealBSykes. So, guys, besides an actual game, this has been one of the most, if not the hottest topic I've been able to cover, for the Gators so far. And all you have to do is look at social media, Twitter, everything out there, message boards, and the differing opinions on there about this Malik Zaire topic. It has his fan base fired up. Joey, I'm pretty sure you're seeing that as well.
Yeah, I set a lot of people off last week when I had said that that if Malik Zaire chose Florida, it was because he was under the premonition that he was going to be the starter for the beginning of the season. All season, I said he would be the starter against Michigan, and it fired some people up. The Felipe Franks hive came out in full force, and I tell you this: when they love hard. And people took offense. People took offense to me saying that Malik Zaire came in, that he would start, as being some thing about Felipe Franks being no good and he's never going to play for Florida, which that's not it at all. As we talked about, Bill, I think you were on that episode where we talked about two or 3 months ago when the Malik Zaire news started heating up, that, I'd been told that the coaches were seeking Malik Zaire out because they didn't have faith in Felipe Franks to start yet. And as of right now, that has not changed. I'm not going to say something like that unless I believe to be 100% factual. And that's what it is. Felipe Franks, it's not an indictment on who he is or what he's going to be as a quarterback. It's what he is now or what he's not. These coaches are ready to win now. McElwain knows this is year 3. He knows he can't beat Alabama. He knows he can't beat Florida State. He's an intelligent man. He may be from the backwoods of Montana, but he is a smart guy, and he's a heck of a football coach, and he knows what he has and what he doesn't have. And I am told that he believes that Malik Zaire would be an upgrade to this offense from what he has now. We know Luke Del Rio's limited. We know that he's not very good as far as his arm talent. We know that Kyle Trask, as of right now, looks like he is not ready to even come close to playing in the SEC. And we know that Felipe Franks is limited as well. He's been in the system for a year, yes, but we also know what he came from as a high school quarterback. David, we've talked about this before. He played backyard football at Wakulla High School. He never really had a playbook to go by. He called his own plays, and he was just so much more talented than the players that he played against that he got away with just his athleticism and his big arm, to go to the state championship. So, it's not an indictment on Felipe Franks as a player, as a person, or what he's going to be. It says more about where McElwain thinks he is right now. And that right now is not going to win you games, especially against that Michigan has on defense. And I believe that McElwain is looking for somebody that is a more effective passer, but has the experience, so to say, that Del Rio does, but is a much better passer. Can we say that Malik Zaire is a much better passer than Del Rio? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But as far as he adds that dimension of a runner that Florida, David, I said to you that Florida has not had in the backfield since Tim Tebow was there. I mean, if you follow Cole Kublik on Twitter, just look at the plays that he was putting up this morning, that Malik Zaire brings that wrinkle to the Florida offense. Malik Zaire is 6'1", and I tweeted to Bill. He ran a 4.52 at the opening. Bill, he's the fastest quarterback that Florida has had in a long time, and I really think that just adding that dimension, Bill, and I'm sure you'll have something to say about this, I think will put Florida's offense in a better position right now than it has been with Treon Harris, Luke Del Rio, and Austin Appleby these last 2 seasons.
Yeah, Bill, I mean, and looking at this, I mentioned the fan perspective, and the reason it's such a hot button topic is, we've thrown up some polls, and we'll go into those polls, but, there's a huge, as Joey mentioned, there's a huge conglomerate. There's a huge base out there that are pro Franks, and there's a huge conglomerate and a huge base that are so Zaire. They want something different. They saw what he was able to bring to the table at Notre Dame, and that was enough for them to jump on and being able to, maybe bringing him in the first place, maybe it does send a sign that, Florida is looking for something at quarterback. And if they feel Jim McElwain and Doug Nussmeier feel like this is the guy, this is the route they're going. So, the fan base out there is so torn on this.
Yeah, listen, here's the thing, man. The reason they're torn is because after all the struggles since Tebow at quarterback, a lot of the fans had really become accustomed and embracing of the vision that they saw between McElwain and Franks. They said, oh, we've got this pro-style quarterback whisperer coach, and now we've got the 6'6" pocket gunslinger quarterback. He's a 4-star. He's highly rated. They took him from LSU. He's the guy to lead us back to glory. And so they bought into this vision. And then suddenly when the interest pops up from between Zaire and Florida, they say, well, wait a minute. If things were so rosy and if things were on the cusp of being this, newfound pro-style revolution with Franks leading the helm, then why is Zaire here? Why is he entering into this? And so it kind of threatens the comfort that people had in what they saw as an emerging program with Franks at the helm. And so I can completely understand that. I can understand why this says, wait a minute, this is causing waves for me. This shouldn't be happening. But then there's another part of the fan base that just says, give me all the quarterbacks you got. And as you know, I've been one of those guys that says more quality arms in camp. You got to have that competition. You got to have a talent upgrade. And so while I am in part in the camp that says this could be cause for concern, I'm also in the camp that firmly believes you got to support a coach that's bringing in more arms in this situation. Even if Franks is the guy, do you really want to depend on him going a full season after what we've seen the past several years? It's been a while since a Gator quarterback has gone bell to bell. You got to bring this guy in. You got to support this move. And while we fans might have some angst over this, that's a cause of concern that's going to have to wait. That's an issue for a later day. For now, you bring the guy in and you roll with it.
Bill, this is a perfect example of beggars can't be choosers. Seriously, this Florida fan base was so spoiled over the last, 25 years between, Spurrier and then going right to, obviously Zook a couple years, but his recruiting, and then you go to Urban Meyer. And frankly, this fan base, it has a champagne taste on a beer budget. And, you just can't be that way at this point in time. And that's why I almost was like, all these people put all their hopes, like you said, Bill, in the Franks, belief that he was going to be the quarterback that McElwain recruited, developed, started, and won an SEC championship with. And things don't always work out the way that people hope sometimes. And I'm not saying that it won't. I'm just saying at this point in time, it might be a little more of a distant than people thought it might be. I'm a huge fan of Felipe Franks. I really hope that he's the guy. I really want to see him stay at Florida. I really want to see him be the guy at Florida. And Bill, you've said this before as well. We want him to succeed. Also believe that this is Florida's best offense that they've had in about 7 or 8 years. And if McElwain believes that this offense would be wasted with Felipe Franks at quarterback for this season, not saying 2 years from now, 3 years from now, this season, then I'm going to believe that Jim McElwain, who's won national championships and SEC championships before, I'm going to ride with him and believe him that maybe that's the reality. And like I said to the fan base, I'm not saying that Felipe Franks is not going to play or even start this year, but it's pretty fickle and naive for people to believe that a quarterback that has, 15 games under his belt and several starts in college football is coming in to waste his last year of eligibility to help groom a young quarterback and sit behind him and cheer him on and pat him on the back. I'm sorry. He chose Florida over Texas, Wisconsin. You could say anything you want about those programs. He chose Florida over North Carolina. He chose Florida over Miami. He chose Florida over Harvard. Obviously Harvard's not a big-time program, but he chose Florida over other big programs because not to sit. He came to Florida to start. I'm sorry. Unless Malik Zaire is this deadbeat in fall camp and Felipe Franks is the next, Joe Montana in fall camp, I just truly believe that McElwain is going to hand the keys to Malik Zaire against Michigan, and that's my firm belief to what I've been told and what I just an outsider's perspective, Bill.
Well, listen, here's the thing. I don't believe for 1 second that Jim McElwain was just sitting there in his office working, and and a few weeks ago he got a phone call from some guy named Malik Zaire and said, "Hey man, I'm looking for a spot. Would you mind if I came in and threw some balls?" No, man, these things don't happen in a vacuum. Jim McElwain knows his quarterback situation, and this does tell you that he views the quarterback situation as a problem. And I guarantee you that intermediaries reached out to one another, and they were just as active in courting Malik Zaire as he was with them. That's the way these things work. Now, I think the thing to realize here is, as much as we're talking about Felipe Franks and Malik Zaire, this is probably a bigger commentary on how McElwain feels about Luke Del Rio, about Kyle Trask, about Jake Allen, and Kadarius Toney. Now, that's not to say that any of those individuals, and like you said, Felipe Franks included, can't be great quarterbacks one day. It says in 2017, he doesn't believe that he's got a couple of guys he can roll with as a 1 and as a 2. Now, where he believes Felipe Franks in that is up for debate. Personally, I don't think Felipe Franks has proven a whole lot. And I think that some of the vision casting that people have is almost getting a little out of hand for the expectations. But I think that you're right. I think that Malik Zaire is going to come in and start.
Stop making so much sense, Bill. Stop making so much sense.
Dude, they agree. There's something wrong with this episode. They agree.
And that's the end of the episode.
The intro last
I said. Scrap it all. I hate you, Bill. I disagree with everything.
Last a little bit longer than I thought. We all had some good points there. Before I kind of dive in, remember, guys, you can find all your Gators Breakdown episodes on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. Search on those sites, and on Twitter at Gators Breakdown, and on Facebook. Just search Gators Breakdown. Please leave a review, rate, share on iTunes. Gators Breakdown there. So I'm going to, I've tried to look at it both ways. I'm going to try to approach this by giving both sides of this debate. Let's just start with, it's the obvious questions that were, asked all throughout the week in different form and fashion. Is bringing Malik Zaire a good thing for Florida? And there are different ways to approach this. I changed my mind originally about how I felt about this. Remember on the show we had like a couple months ago, and this kind of started leaking out that Zaire was interested in Florida. I was completely against it because I'm just not impressed with what I've seen from the little film that's out there. But the more I thought about it and throughout the months, it's not a bad idea to let him come in, compete, given what Florida has and has had at the quarterback position. I'm the first to admit I'm a blind faith believer in Felipe Franks. That's just how I see it. It's blind faith. We want how he's yet to take a live snap at Florida. And, and while Zaire would be new in this Florida offense, he offers something Franks doesn't have, and that's experience in playing in big games and multiple games. So Del Rio has experience in big games. He Florida, Georgia last year, of course, before the injury, didn't play all so great. That experience, it's not great. We, as Joey mentioned, we know what we have in Luke Del Rio. And most Florida fans are ready to move on. So if anything, the quarterback situation itself has gotten better because there are now 3 options for Jim McElwain and Doug Nussmeier to work with, mainly Franks, Zaire, Del Rio. Depth is better. Now, some will combat that with these may just be 3 options that are mediocre at best, and the quarterback situation still isn't any better with whoever wins the job. But guys, we have consistently said, even before this, Florida is a top 10 to top 15 team. And this was before Zaire. Preseason magazines agree they have Florida around 15. There is already belief in this team that, based on what we know, that, even and most thought Felipe Franks was going to be the starter before all this. But Zaire's coming in. He's going to add some competition, add some depth. With a very good chance to start from what we've seen. And Joey has said it best when we talk about what Jim McElwain has done so far and the parts he's putting together to get Florida to an SEC championship without a quarterback. Maybe this isn't. Maybe now he is seeing all the pieces are there. He has built his car. He just needs the driver now. And maybe he really feels and believes Malik Zaire is that guy.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said to you, David, that Malik Zaire, I don't believe, from what I've been told in my outsider's perspective, that he's coming in to compete for the starting job. I think that he believes the starting job is his to lose, and barring any significant injury or barring, obviously him just stinking up the joint in fall camp, or Felipe Franks, playing out of his mind. I believe that Malik Zaire is going to be named the starter for the season. Like I just said a couple minutes ago, that does not mean that Malik Zaire is going to play the whole season. We know he has injury concerns, and maybe that is McElwain's way of saying, look, it's good enough to start for me, but I feel more comfortable with Malik Zaire against a team like Michigan at this point in time. But if Malik Zaire goes down with an injury, which he has in the past several times, I got a guy behind him in Felipe Franks that the fan base wants to see and that I believe could win us games. So I'm going to trust Jim McElwain in this situation. Jim McElwain has won 20 games at Florida in 2 seasons, okay? That's a lot of games in the SEC, okay? I don't care what the SEC looks like. I don't care who he's lost to, who he's beat. He's won 20 games in 2 years in the SEC, and that to me says I'm going to trust him for a 3rd season. And until he proves me otherwise, I'm going to say that Malik Zaire is going to start against Michigan, and that I believe that Malik Zaire is going to be the best option for Florida. And like Bill just said, this wasn't a coincidence. Malik Zaire didn't call up Jim McElwain and said, hey, Jim, I see you're looking for a quarterback. I'm available. No, Jim McElwain put out his feelers, probably had some intermediary, Malik Zaire had his people contact Jim McElwain's people at Florida, and they connected. And this has been something that's been in the works for the last 3 months. And the only thing we were waiting for, Bill and David, was this rule to get changed, which it did. And ironically, what is the first thing that happened after the rule gets changed? Florida's offensive players start Instagram posting and tweeting all these joyous reactions, so to say. And Malik Zaire even tweeted a joyous reaction. Let's do it, with about 10 exclamation marks. So that's match made in heaven, Bill, for this season. I'm not saying this is good for the future or, 2 years from now, but who knows, Bill and David, this could be what Florida needs in 2017 to use Callaway, to use Tyree Cleveland, to use Jordan Scarlett, and to use LaMichael Pirine, and the weapons that Florida has all over the offense this year, and win an SEC championship. Maybe get to a college football playoff. Beat Florida State. Beat Georgia and Tennessee this year, and beat Alabama in the SEC championship game, Bill. Like I said, beggars cannot be choosers. And unfortunately, Florida's in a position where they're begging for a quarterback to come in and actually compete and play competent football. And if this is going to, help that, I'm all in. Get me a Zaire jersey right now.
When you were saying that, I was sitting here thinking about this meeting where they changed the rules, and I can imagine like Strickland going up to addressing the audience and saying, hey, Mr. LSU AD, we've gone all this way. Surely you don't want to try to stop us here at the goal line. Go ahead and let Zaire in,
Hey, there was even some rumors going around that the SEC was owing Florida one for figuring out this LSU situation.
He's done everything. Don't stop him a yard short.
That was a good little shot there. Yeah, if that happened, that would have been awesome.
Yeah, Dave, do you want to kind of talk about why I think Zaire could really make a difference here?
Yeah, that's actually where we're going next. What is Florida getting in Malik Zaire? We've broken this down for the last couple of weeks. Once the report came out that, I guess it was a week ago, when the report came out that sources were saying Malik Zaire wanted to be a Gator if the rule was changed, and everyone kind of started their Malik Zaire tape watching. And even before then, we've kind of peeked at it. But when it became more of a reality, everyone's kind of started to look. And I posted links of his highlights of the LSU bowl game, and then opening up the season against Texas the very next year. Everyone kind of wanted to see what Malik Zaire was bringing to the table. Let's start with his stats: 58 to 98, 59% completion, 816 yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. Rushing stats: 72 attempts, 324 yards, 4.5 yards, average there, and 2 touchdowns. And a good follower is our VB Payne found a passing chart of Malik Zaire, and we'll share it here. So the left-handed quarterback there, of course. So this is from 0 to 9 yards. Throwing to his left, he's 3 of 4 for 21 yards. no touchdowns, no interceptions, 75% completion rate. Middle of the field, 4 of 6 for 54 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, 66% rate there. To the right, 6 of 9 for 33 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, 66% completion there as well. Moving up, 10 to 19 yards for his passing chart here. 7 of 11 to his left for 146 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, of course, 63%. Middle of the field, something that's lacked in the Florida passing game a good bit. 6 of 6 for 106 yards, 1 touchdown. So that was, of course, 100% completion rate. This is from 10 to 19 yards. So to the right, as I mentioned, he's a left-handed quarterback. So once you see here, 6 of 15, 86 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Now here comes the problem part. Malik Zaire passes 20-plus yards, 1 of 5 to the left for 26 yards. In the middle of the field, 0 for 2. Of course, nothing there. To the right, 3 of 5, 155 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. So he's actually throwing across his body to the right side of the field when he throws deep, has some success there. Under pressure, 6 of 11 for 52 yards. So here's what I was talking about. His 20-plus yards targets, 4 of 12 combined for 33%. And Will Fuller was his favorite target, 15 of 26, 291 yards. 4 touchdowns to Will Fuller there. So as we can kind of see, Malik Zaire, you look at his passing chart there, a lot of the short yardage stuff, not a lot of tape, not a lot of experience, really pretty much 2 games we know we can look at here, and almost a third when he got hurt against Virginia. When you look at there. So that's kind of what you're getting in Malik Zaire. And I got some more too, but I don't want to hog all the time here. So given those stats and what we've seen there, we know, of course, his running is going to be a big part of his repertoire and what he brings to Florida. So, Bill, I'll start with you here. Mentioning those stats and what we have seen and the film we have watched, how does Malik Zaire fit into this Florida offense?
Well, I'm going to let you guys hash this passing attack out a little bit, and I know that's a big issue. But one of my followers, Rick Fuller, at Richard 14407-640, really got me thinking. When we kind of asked who would start and why, and he had said Zaire will give Don Brown, the Michigan defense coordinator, nightmares. And he said kind of like he does with Barrett and Francois, like those mobile quarterbacks have given him a problem. It just really got me thinking about what does Zaire really do for Florida's offense, given McElwain's preferences and given the personnel. And when you look at last year, you saw a lot of perimeter attacks, particularly towards the end of the year against Iowa and against LSU. And I know they did run right at people with Scarlett at times, but they really tried to go away from the middle of the field, test the perimeter, get their athletes in space. And I think a lot of that had to do with the offensive line. And while the offensive line has gotten better, I still don't think they're going to be the best, especially on the interior at the point of attack. I'm not sold as much as some people are in McCoy as far as his ability to just maul people. I think he's more of a wall-off kind of blocker, good in double teams. I think he'd be good getting up on linebackers. But they are a little better at the tackles. Given that, given Florida's playmakers, given Scarlett, I think the real catalyst element that Zaire brings is what he's going to do for this running game. And not just as a guy that can run read option and run the ball, but for me, it's more about the numbers game. If you can help the interior of the line by running these read option plays where you're isolating a defensive end and not having to block him, just to read him. Or if you go inside, and let's give a little ode to Will Muschamp here, because I know what a freaking midline is. And we can run midline option schemes where we can isolate a 3-technique tackle. Suddenly, you're not putting pressure on these young guards and TJ McCoy to maul a guy off the ball. You can have them double team backside or get up on a linebacker and key off that defensive tackle. And suddenly you've won the numbers game because now you've got a capable running quarterback coming at you and Jordan Scarlett. And so instead of Jordan Scarlett having to maul past the line of scrimmage and to break tackles after a yard downfield, well, now suddenly maybe you're putting the guy in space where he doesn't have to make a guy miss until 3 or 4 yards down the field. And if they can start to generate these bigger runs, if they can come at people with a more diverse running attack and take pressure off of that interior offensive line, then you watch out, because Scarlett is the real deal. And they have a better line. And they've got the wide receivers on the perimeter. Because if that running game gets going, between Scarlett, between Zaire, and Perrine. Well, suddenly that's when those linebackers start to cheat up. That's when those safeties start to keep their eyes on, inside a little more and cheat up. That's when run pass option and play action, like Zaire excelled at times at Notre Dame, becomes a thing. Because suddenly when that safety's cheating up, now you're putting Callaway on a post route down the middle, and they're having to keep their eyes. That's when you're keeping the defenses off balance. And we know how McElwain likes these pistol looks. I'm envisioning, 3-back pistol looks, having, a Perrine or a Scarlett back there, having a Tony or a Powell, or, some of these guys that are slash players that can run up in like an H-back look. And now that defense can't tell what you're doing, you're in a symmetrical, 3-back pistol. I think they have a real chance to make things go. And I think it could all start with Zaire. But I'm going backwards. Yes, the passing game is going to open up, but I think it's going to start with the running game.
Guys.
Sorry, I was about to have a nerd fit.
We talked about, in the past when McElwain got hired at Florida, what kind of offense he would bring. And he used the word multiple, multiple times. We always equate McElwain with a pro offense, stand up pocket passer, stand tall in the pocket. But McElwain is a multiple offensive coordinator. He runs multiple offense. That's why it's called multiple, because it's a hybrid offense. It's a hybrid between a pass heavy, run heavy offense. It's a hybrid between a pro and a spread. So if you got a guy like Malik Zaire that can, straight line 4.52, and I mean, if you watch Cole Kubelik's videos on his Twitter feed this morning, can get through the offensive line and not just get outside, but can actually run through the offensive line and get, to the second level. Like you said, Bill, it's going to make the safeties think twice about, playing a deep third or playing a deep high safety. And that's going to only benefit Tyree Cleveland and Antonio Callaway. But then, David, you brought up the fact that Malik Zaire has a high completion percentage on those intermediate to short throws. That's what Florida's been missing, David. Mm-hmm. I mean, we talked about that ever since Will Grier, was kicked off the team or suspended, left. Treon Harris struggled with the intermediate and short throws. Luke Del Rio struggled with the intermediate throws. Austin Appleby struggled with the intermediate throws. And that's something.
And before you go, since we're comparing, what was the knock on Felipe Franks as well throughout the spring?
The seam can't throw the slants, can't throw the digs and the out routes. Yeah. Absolutely. So you don't think that, going back to what I said about these players, Jordan Scarlett posting celebratory things, Brandon Powell celebrating, on Instagram. These guys see Felipe Franks in practice every day, guys. These guys have probably watched Malik Zaire's tape to kind of see what kind of quarterback he is. They're happy. They know what they got coming in, and they know what they already have. Newsflash, I teased this yesterday. I don't want to Captain Obvious here, but guys, if offensive players are tweeting celebratory posts or Instagram posting celebratory things about a new guy coming in, a quarterback, obviously it means that something was missing before. David, that it's the intermediate and the short throws. A guy like Brandon Powell, he's going to feast for the quarterback like Malik Zaire. Where's Brandon Powell best at, guys? On the slants, on the digs, on the shovel passes, on the routes that are 5 to 8 yards out, because that's Will Grier helped Brandon Powell the first 5 games of the year last year, 2015. He thrived on those intermediate routes, those short routes, and I think a guy like Brandon Powell with Malik Zaire being a quarterback can have a huge senior season this year. And I think that's what Malik Zaire brings to Florida, something that Florida's been missing since Will Grier got suspended.
Yeah, and if I may add one more thing here, David, you talked about being multiple, and our fans need to understand that multiplicity, as it will, in Jim McElwain's offense. He likes to run 100 different formations at you, but he might only run the same 4, 5, 6, 10, whatever, how many ever plays. And he wants to give them to you from different looks. And the name of the game is to disguise what they're doing and to put the defense in a position where it has to pick their poison and guess. And that's one of the reasons they have gone to this pistol look, whereas the traditional shotgun running back would line up to one side or the other. Well, that allowed defenses to kind of scheme off of that depending on where he was and try to gain a step and kind of figure out where he's going to go. But putting him directly behind the quarterback it gives this symmetrical look. And that's where you see these diamond formations coming from. And they're trying to hide what they're doing. And if this opens up run pass option, if they get this running game going, if they can put these players in spaces on the slants, it's going to allow the entire offense to be more unpredictable, and they're going to be able to attack the defense rather than the defense attacking them. And that is the name of the game.
Bill, David, if Malik Zaire is 10% better than what Florida's had the last 2 seasons, I think that makes Florida an instant player in the college football playoff race. Because what have we been saying for the last 2 years? Florida's been a quarterback away from winning a national championship, or at least contending for a national championship. We talked many a times, Bill, about how, Jim McElwain built this car with spare parts at the most important position. And if Malik Zaire is better than a spare part, even if he's a used part that was at one time, brand new and shiny and fast and cool and awesome, if you can get him at a discount price for better than what you've had the last 2 years, I think it instantly makes Florida a contender specifically because of the offensive weapons that Florida has. And don't think for 1 second that McElwain knows that he's going to have to score more points this year than he has in the last 2 years, because that defense is not going to be able to, stifle teams the way that it has. So, Jim McElwain knows that he might have to score 30 to 35 points a game to win consistently, as opposed to scoring 17 to 20.
I'll let you go ahead, Dave. I want to disagree after that.
Hey, there it is. Finally.
And to kind of go into that, Gator critic out there, he's to throw this out there. He said, to give an example, and we were talking about how comparisons, and if Florida gets the quarterback, a better quarterback, what can that mean? Well, also a different dynamic here with Malik Zaire. He said JT Barrett for Ohio State finished 55th in quarterback rating, but he ran for 845 yards. So average passing can be overcome with great running. He said, and the reason that was kind of brought up is what I said about Malik Zaire is, would you take his throwing to be as good as Austin Appleby if he gave you a few big runs a game that we know he can do? So he went back and looked, and Austin Appleby also he was ranked 70th in quarterback rating. So about 20 spots there. So quarterback rating, yes, it's to a point, but in today's college football, if you can get in a right system, can Jim McElwain, we talk about his multiple sets, can he come up with a system to where the passing game, Malik Zaire is not the best passer in the world. That's no secret. We know that. But can he pass similar to what, and hopefully better, don't get me wrong, hopefully it's better than what we've seen from Austin Appleby. But if that's what we get, but plus, 800 yards rushing, 900 yards rushing, how much does that help the Florida offense? I think it helps it tremendously.
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be some synergistic improvement here because of the fit. I think that he's just a really good fit. And if you look at what Appleby did last year, there were times when he was running read option looks. And we've seen that with every quarterback that's been out there. And they haven't really wanted to hand it off. Haven't wanted to take off with the keeper very often. But I think this offense doesn't have to change a whole lot to accommodate Zaire and to make it go. So, yes, it'll be better. The point of disagreement I have, I'm not convinced that window is still open for Jim McElwain to where we can say anymore they just need a quarterback. We have seen a lot of defensive talent hemorrhage from the roster. And so, kind of like you said, they're going to need a lot more points. And I think if they're needing 30 to 35 points to win consistently, we might be in trouble. I hope the defense doesn't fall off that much. I just think it's going to take more than that. There's a lot of questions to be answered. I'm not ready to say, even if Zaire comes in and does well, that this team is a contender for the playoffs at this point. Beating Florida State and beating Alabama, however paramount, is a tall order. And they've got a lot of questions to answer before I'm ready to go that far.
30 to 35 points a game, Bill, isn't even that much anymore. It's 2017, not 1997. Oklahoma and Big 12 teams, Oklahoma State are competing for, college football playoff spots, and they're in the big bowl games on a consistent basis because they have to score 35 to 40 points a game, sometimes more. So I'm not going to sit here and say that, and agree with you that 30 to 35 points a game would mean that Florida's in trouble, because Alabama was scoring 30 to 35 points a game and then some on top of that. And their defense was excellent every year. So if Florida has to score 30 to 35 points a game to win games, That's not that big of a drop off in the defense that Florida's had, actually.
I don't know, man. Alabama only gave up 13 points a game last year. Ohio State was 15.5, LSU 15.8, Florida 16.8, Auburn 17.1, Miami 18.5. I can go on and on. I mean, that's a lot of points, man. You're talking about being.
But that's on average. One game you could give up 10, and the next game you could give up 35. I mean, that's an average. If you want to go game by game.
I mean, it's going to happen occasionally. Yes, the offense, and you're right in the sense that the offense is going to have to win some games. They're going to have to win some shootouts. I mean, that's.
Do you think the defense
you're just not going to get there without it? But you can't depend on that. The defense is going to have to step up.
Do you think the defense is going to struggle against Northern Colorado, Bill? Do you think the defense is going to struggle? Of course not. So
I'm talking about
add those games. Yeah, but that's for a season, though. Those are averages for the season. So that's Alabama's stats against the FCS teams they played also. So
you think they're giving up 30 points a game in the SEC?
Who, Alabama? But if you break down their SEC games, just their SEC games, I guarantee you their defense was giving up more points in the SEC than they were for the entire season. If you just want to average out just the SEC games, if you want to break down what they gave up in just SEC play, I guarantee you that they went up a couple points. Maybe they were giving up to 17 maybe a game.
They gave up 30 twice in the SEC. They actually gave up 43 to Mississippi, and they gave up 30 to Arkansas, but they held Kentucky to 6, Tennessee to 10, Texas A&M to 14. They shut out LSU, give up 3 to Mississippi State, and gave up 12 to Auburn. So I just kind of like I said, I think, yes, a couple times a year, sure, but consistently, no.
Of course not consistently, but I think Florida's defense is good enough. I don't think there's going to be as much of a drop-off as 50 to 70% of the people out there think there is. I think that Randy Shannon is a good enough coach, and I believe that the assistants that he hired this year are good enough, like Corey Bell. I think that scheme has already been in place for Randy Shannon to succeed as Florida's defensive coordinator. And I think that the questions that we obviously answered on many of the podcasts over the last couple months, being as the defensive line depth or the linebacker position, or, obviously all the new starting defensive backs. But if Randy Shannon's worth his salt in, coaching world, which we know that he wants to get back to being a head coach, then he will not let this defense drop off significantly.
I sure hope not.
Yeah, I'm going to give a little timeline of Malik Zaire here. I went back and looked at some, past articles, Pro Football Focus, and went and looked at some Notre Dame stuff as well. So to go back to when Zaire got hurt, Pro Football Focus had an article out. We haven't seen much of Zaire at this point, but they were describing it as, week 1 blowout win against Texas. And they said no matter how much the Texas defense struggled this year, Zaire's passing numbers against Texas were very impressive. He was 86% completion, 13 of 14 on throws of 10-plus yards. But he did what he was supposed to against a very bad defense. And, I think that speaks numbers, especially what we've seen Florida quarterbacks do when they still struggled against teams they were supposed to blow out. That Texas defense finished the season ranked 107th in total defense, giving up 453 yards a game. 78th in passing yards, 233 yards per game, ranked 112th in rushing defense, so 219 yards a game. And that's the game everybody points to for Malik Zaire, where he played very well, did what he was supposed to against a pretty bad defense. But wasn't nearly as sharp the following week against Virginia, the game he got hurt in, when he ended his season got ended there in the third quarter of that game. Before he went out, he was 7 of 18 for 115 yards. One of those throws was a 58-yard touchdown pass. He did have 87 yards on 10 carries. Fast forward to another year when he's back from injury, now in a quarterback battle with Deshaun Kaiser. And the quote I really took from this, and I know Joey's not a big Brian Kelly fan, but this is all we have to go on. I'm trying to share both sides here. With Zaire, this is part of the author of the article of the News Sentinel here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. With Zaire, his improvement, this is 1 year ago, going into camp last year. His improvement was simply take time. He struggled during the spring in making the right calls, correct reads, all of the critical aspects of managing offense efficiently. Those are things that simply take practice and game experience to master to Kelly's satisfaction. And here's the quote from Brian Kelly. We'll have to spend a little bit more time to see some calls that were made where the protections flipped on the right side. Did he fan in the right direction? Should we have gotten out of a particular play? We'll have to look at that. That's a worry to me when he's been in that system for a couple seasons and they're still wondering if he's making the right calls before, when we look at tape, all we're seeing is his throws that he's made. The ball is snapped, we're seeing what he can do. But, this is something that we've kind of overlooked, and this is before the snap. And there's people out there who have been able to see Malik Zaire struggle with an offense that he's been in, still making the right reads before snap and getting the offense in the best play to keep the offense going.
But can we also, for a second, realize that Malik Zaire was coming back and trying to beat out DeShone Kizer, who everybody thought was a top 3 pick in the NFL draft in the beginning of last season?
I'm going to get to that. Yep.
When we saw Texas and Notre Dame play on Labor Day evening, wasn't that the Shane Buechele versus DeShone Kizer Bowl where we said that both of those teams had a chance to win a national championship this year? We said that Shane Buechele was a future at Texas, and he was a top 5 pick in the draft in a couple of years. And we knew that DeShone Kizer was going to be a top 3 pick in the draft this year. So the way Notre Dame finished the season was not the way Notre Dame started the season. Notre Dame had a ton of hype going into the last season. So Malik Zaire kind of had an uphill battle, so to say, in the offseason. And there was no way that he was going to win that starting job. Sad that, he broke his ankle 2 years ago, because if you can recall, after that Texas game that he had, that huge outing against Texas 2 years ago, there were a lot of people saying that he could win the Heisman that year. I mean, he threw a bunch of touchdowns. Bill's over there smiling, but that's what ESPN was saying. I wasn't saying it.
I'm not disagreeing with you, man.
I didn't follow Notre Dame football at that point. I mean, I obviously just watched them because I'm a college football fan. But, obviously I'm not a Notre Dame fan, but that's what ESPN was telling everybody after that game. So, the hype was there. He's a 4-star recruit. He's not a scrub. He was a top 3 dual threat quarterback in the country out of Ohio. And, obviously, people obviously get scared and get nervous when they hear grad transfer in Florida, but it's not Luke Del Rio and it's not Austin Appleby. I think you have an upgrade here. And I think that, we talked about Jarrett Stidham, obviously, at length when he was, mulling over Florida and Auburn, Bill, you remember that? And we said that Jarrett Stidham coming in would not be like a grad transfer at all. I think Malik Zaire is just a notch down from Jarrett Stidham, to be honest.
I was just thinking that Tebow finished a game on a broken leg once.
It's cool. Yeah. I'm pretty sure Malik Zaire snapped his ankle in 2, actually. I actually don't think
Tebow would have finished. He would have bludgeoned somebody with the broken leg.
But, and to go along with that and what Joey's saying, and, I have a source close to the program, and, I've shared some information with you guys. And one reason the staff did want Malik Zaire was they feel he is a very smart player, a very smart quarterback. And, given that Notre Dame's offense, it is pretty complex. So what we see here is, there was a lot to work with there. And, there's no telling the mental state of him when he's coming back from injury. Of course, he probably had to sit out the fall and spring as well. I think he actually did play. That's what they were saying there. But, there's no telling where his mental state was at that time. And, yes, it is a very complex offense. And that's one reason the coaches are high on Malik Zaire is, he's played in a system that, could translate very well to what Florida does. It's, some pro-style sets. He can run out of it. You saw some zone read out at Notre Dame as well. But, if Florida's offense isn't as complex, can it translate to well? He comes in, he's ready. A lot of people have speculated maybe he's even had a peek at a Florida playbook, coming in.
He admitted that he received the playbook.
Okay.
He admitted it, yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I didn't get one. What's up with that, man?
Because, Bill, they'd be afraid that you would sell it on the black market to the highest bidder.
Oh, come on. I'm not a turncoat.
And Karen from Key Largo would offer you a lot of money for it.
I think she's whispering in your ear right now telling you to say that.
But, we fast forward
No comment about her. No comment.
We fast forward to last year, Joey.
Can you hear us, Karen?
I think she's watching.
6 months from now, she'll be off of Twitter for good. I don't know if you guys saw her bet, but
yeah, we'll see what happens there. Joey, you did mention DeShone Kizer coming out and looking good, and part of the reason Malik Zaire never gets in. And one argument I don't like people that are using against Malik Zaire is if he was good enough, he would have gotten on the field last season when Notre Dame went 4-8 last year. And we gave you some reasons why that might have been the case. What he struggled at, but also, let's not act like Notre Dame had this terrible offense and terrible quarterback last season just because they went 4-8. They still had the 48th best passing offense in the country, going by yards per game, 254 yards per game. Let's not forget, Kaiser was also just a second-round pick in the NFL draft just, a month or so ago. So is Zaire really going to start over a guy that went, 26 touchdown passes, 9 interceptions, threw for almost 3,000 yards? That was better stats than what Jalen Hurts had at Alabama. Hurts played in 3 more games, had 3 less touchdowns, and 200 less passing yards than Kaiser. So would you have started Zaire over Hurts last season? I don't think anybody would. I don't think anybody would have done that.
Terrible. Notre Dame's terrible.
So that's why that's a flawed argument. I don't think many people would have done that. So it's people who want to put the blame on him. They're saying he can't get on the field of a 4-8 team. Look, Kaiser was leading the way of an offense that was doing pretty well. Notre Dame's defense was the main cause of that 4-8 season. So that's a pretty flawed argument there.
Yeah, and the guys put some good tape. Put good football on tape. Excuse me. It's not like he's a complete unknown. I mean, if you want a complete unknown at this point, let's be honest, it's Franks. I mean, the only time that he looked good was the spring game this year. And that's not to say he's not good now or won't be good later. It's just he's an unknown. But you look at the defensive lineup he was facing. Snap 1 in the spring game, he was facing off versus a 248-pound walk-on defensive tackle named R.J. Raymond. He had a converted tight end, Cameron Knight, at linebacker, a walk-on safety, Garrett Stevens, who's 5'9", 188, and it goes on and on and on. He hasn't proven it yet, and so I don't like the argument that Frank should be the guy based off of the spring game and that we should just negate the experience. I mean, I've got, several followers who commented when we asked him who would start that pointed to Zaire's big game experience. Layla at Layla 123 p.m. says he's going to start only because he's an experienced quarterback and he's going to be needed for such a big game like Michigan. Makes perfect sense. Brian Coates said the same thing. Malik's been in big games, won't be rattled. CP3 at CPaul 1285 said he's probably had the playbook the whole time. Well, there you go. Now we know he has. And then Davis at Fishing King 2442 says, I think Zaire, due to his experience in big games and his ability he showed before the injury. I think that's very reasonable. And I understand why people disagree with that. But the guy, even though he's been limited, he's had 98 passes he's thrown, hasn't thrown an interception. He's done well on the big stage. He's won a bowl game MVP. He looked good against Texas, which, as much as I wanted to shed a tear for Charlie Strong and how bad Texas looked in that game, he got it done.
Who did he beat in that bowl game? LSU. He beat an SEC opponent of Florida's in that game and looked good doing it.
Yeah, and I will tell you this, though, about that. And I have not watched the Virginia tape, but I have watched every snap of LSU. I've watched every snap of Texas as well as some others. In the LSU game, he was younger. You saw a lot more one-read plays, a lot of, just testing the perimeter with screens and, more design runs. I think there was less RPO involved in that. But against Texas, later in his career, there were times he stood tall in the pocket in a way that we never saw from Driscoll or Treon and delivered the football. I think he can do it. I don't. It's hard when we look at such limited tape and when we look at such a limited resume. I'm not going to pronounce this guy the savior of Gator football. I'm not ready to say he's any more than a journeyman stopgap, but he could be. He has shown flashes at times that he can do the things that he needs to do to succeed in Jim McElwain's offense.
And Joey, before we get to you, I want you to finish this up because I want you to get this too. Our friends at 24/7 Sports have allowed us to share this information from Luke Stampini, who was at the Elite
Inside
11.
Info.
Inside info from Luke. They gave us the rights to share this. So at the Elite 11 camp, which is going on this weekend, from what Luke Zaire did get the throw at the Elite 11 with all the top high school quarterback prospects. Justin Fields is out there, Emory Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Jaron Williams. All those guys are out there. Malik Zaire got the throw as well. From what he saw in the limited time, Zaire did not look good throwing the ball, and quote said UF needs to ride with Franks from what he saw. We did get to see some video that was released as well. There were a few good throws on that tape, but for the most recent thing that we have, that's the report.
I mean, it's with high school kids.
Oh well, yeah, I know. Take it with it. Yeah, I'll take that. But I'm just saying,
so was the spring game.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it's out there. This is the first time we've getting to see him throw away from Notre Dame and all that. So it's out there, and it needed to be shared. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I understand. And Bill, I actually was going to ask you this. I actually am hearing that Malik Zaire is going to petition the NCAA for a 6-year of eligibility due to the medical red shirt that he had to take. So, if he's approved that 6-year of eligibility, Florida might have something here, because if Zaire comes in and plays pretty well this year, I mean, you got a returning starter for 2018 with a better defense. I mean, that's a pretty big thing to kind of think of in the back of your mind. And obviously, we know Florida's defense in 2018 is going to be stellar. They look at the recruits they just got this year, plus the experience they're going to have from the linebackers and the defensive line. So, this year, like I said, if you got to score 30 to 35 a game, and then you look to 2018, whether it's Franks or Malik Zaire returning for a 6-year of eligibility, going back to what David just said, I'll take that with a grain of salt. I want to see what he looks like with Florida receivers, with Florida playmakers, because obviously I posted the YouTube video of him throwing yesterday on my timeline, and you can see that at JoeyV_SEC Sports. I think he threw about 12 passes in the video. And he looked good on about 7 or 8 of them, and he missed a couple. So,
and I don't know if there was any more than that either. So that's it's in context.
And it was with high school kids catching the football too. So obviously, I'm not even gonna kind of live with that. But Stampini might be a guy that is all in on the Franks train as well. But when you got guys, like I said, and I don't want to repeat myself too much, but you got guys like Brandon Powell and Jordan Scarlett and others that see Felipe Franks in practice every single day, when they're celebrating a quarterback coming in, that nobody really knows about. I mean, that says something to me. That says all I need to know about what they think of Franks. Like I said, I'm not going to pile on the kid. He's just a kid. He's a redshirt freshman. He's going into his 2nd year at Florida. But that to me says more than what beat writers can tell us, what the coaches want to tell us during press conferences, which are all made up anyway. So that's all I need to know to end my rant.
Well, listen, I follow Stampini quite a bit, and I know that he's a straight shooter, and he does provide everybody at 24/7 with some good inside info like that, and that's firsthand information.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say that mitigates that a little bit is that I think that the way he can play and the style of offense they're going to run, I don't think he's going to be asked to sit in the pocket and be a surgeon. Yep. I just think it's not my number one concern. It is a concern, and if the guy's getting loosey-goosey, then sure, we're going to have to consider that and factor that in. But on to the other question about the 6 years of eligibility. One of our followers, Fern Park Rob at Fern Park Gator, actually asked exactly that, because that is the rumor going around. The one thing I will tell you is that if he gets that 6th year, it's probably not going to be announced till much later. That's a lengthy appeals process, and they drag their feet on that sometimes. So I wouldn't expect to hear on that right away. Maybe not even this year.
Bill, before we wrap up, I know you and I had a poll that thrown out about who's going to start versus Michigan. Didn't you have a comparison for Treon Harris?
I did. I did. Listen, some of the
because that's more than likely that's going to be the Treon Harris played under Jim McElwain, and a lot of people will say I've heard it plenty of times. Malik Zaire is just a bigger Treon Harris. So with that thought out there, you did some research to show we know what Treon Harris was able to do in Jim McElwain's offense. It was limited, couldn't run a lot. There was no depth behind him either. Play calling was somewhat limited with Jim McElwain and Treon Harris. What you got, Bill?
Yeah, listen, some of the more critical fans and those critical of Zaire kind of look at this as, oh, man, here we go again, another Treon Harris. That didn't work, and this isn't going to work either. I did a statistical tale of the tape. Malik Zaire, I've got him at 6 foot. I know Joey has him at 6'1", whereas Treon Harris was 5'11", and that's an issue because everybody said he couldn't see over the line, and so they were always having to get him outside the pocket. Personally, I think that was just quarterback vision in general, in addition to being shorter, not just a physical thing. But when you look at the statistics, although Treon Harris played behind some ramshackle offensive lines, there's a significant statistical advantage for Malik Zaire. The completion percentage for Harris was 50.3 for his career. The career for Zaire, again in limited reps, is 59.2. That's a tremendous difference. Yards per attempt, 7.8 for Treon Harris, 8.3 for Zaire. 18 to 10 touchdown ratio for for Harris, 6-0 for Zaire. The rating is 22 points higher for Zaire with a 149 over Harris's 127. And Zaire gets about a yard per carry average more than Harris got when he's toting the ball. I think for me personally, though, I just think it's a much better pocket presence from Zaire. He plays taller in the pocket. And that could have been a rattling issue. That could have been just, I'm taking off and running. But for whatever reason, yes, you do see Zaire get out of the pocket, but he doesn't look like a guy that has to get out of the pocket like Harris does. So I don't think it's fair at this point, even when you consider the context of the offenses those guys played in. I just don't think it's fair to really compare the two at this point. I think that Zaire is going to be a much better player.
Yeah, Bill, I've met Treon Harris before when he was a freshman, and I'm 5'10", and I was like 2 or 3 inches taller than him. So if 5'11", yeah, maybe on his tippy toes and cleats, because
Right.
there's no way that he was that tall. I mean, there's no way he was 5'11". I mean, I stood next to the guy face to face. So I will say that. I believe Zaire's probably a couple inches taller than Treon Harris, which obviously does make a difference. It really does. A couple inches. I mean, go ask any NFL draft scout. The difference between a 6'3" quarterback and a 6'1" quarterback is huge. I mean, it's huge. It could actually drop you like an entire round. Because I mean, they do. They really count every inch as a really big advantage. So I won't compare the height. You know, that's not even a thing for me. Because we've seen Zaire have success at his height for years. So, I mean, he's won games at his height. He's thrown touchdowns at his height. So I'm not even worried about the height aspect. The one thing I will say about Treon Harris, do you honestly believe that Jim McElwain would have ever recruited Treon Harris as a quarterback to the University of Florida?
No, I don't think so.
No.
But then again,
was the only coach.
He didn't recruit Zaire either. I mean, I think that situationally, if it was Harris out there, at this point, though, I mean, would Harris have been as bad as he was now?
Treon Harris was not a third-ranked dual-threat quarterback in the country out of high school.
You're right about that.
He was not a four-star, and Florida State was going to turn him into an athlete/wide receiver.
I mean, he was a 4-star athlete. I guess more than anything, I kind of wonder, would Treon Harris be that bad if he was coming into Florida now with this offensive line and these perimeter players? I mean, maybe he'd do better.
I mean, yeah. I just saw limited skills from the time that he stepped on campus until the time he left. I mean, we know that he had a good deep ball, but we know that he struggled with the short throws. I mean, back in 2014, if you guys remember, you know, Florida was in Tallahassee that year, and Florida should have won that game. Treon Harris, I believe, that game for Florida in Doak Campbell. I mean, Jameis Winston looked atrocious in that game. I think he threw 3 interceptions, David?
Tip balls.
Yeah, and bad memory alert. Bad memory alert.
Yeah. And there was still a shot late for Treon to lead a drive.
Yep,
very late.
He threw an interception. And he threw an interception.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So the big question before we get out of here, big question. So I know Joey has to go, so if he has to scoot out of here, we'll do our little poll results and we'll get out of here. But the big question. Guys. All right, Joey. Thanks, man.
See you later, Joey.
Thank you. Thanks, followers. Appreciate you.
Bill and I threw up the same poll without even really knowing it. So it's very interesting, the results that we have seen from the big question. If the reporters, Malik Zaire coming to Florida, who starts at quarterback versus Michigan? Now, I posted mine about a week ago when the report first came out. So, of course, I think with people getting excited and potential changes at quarterback for Florida, what would happen. So with the results of mine, out of 733 votes, I had the 3 choices of Malik Zaire, Felipe Franks, and Luto Rio. So out of 733 votes, 48% chose Felipe Franks, 46% chose Malik Zaire, and there's 6% out there who still think Luto Rio will be the starting quarterback. And a couple comments I received from some followers out there. E.B. Payne says, Franks, not sure why people have so much confidence in Zaire, yet none in Franks. The red shirt stigma is strong, but we'll trust a guy who's injury prone. And then Ty Brody out there says, he's saying Zaire, he hopes Franks can beat him out, but worst case, Franks sees a few snaps and learns to turn through one more year, and then it kind of takes over. So, Bill, that was kind of the results that I got, and some two really good comments there. So, I think we kind of jokingly said, I think your results were a little different.
Yeah, the tide has turned, my friend. I said, hey, who starts a quarterback for the Gators versus Michigan and why? Well, 55% are now saying Malik Zaire. People are warming up to the idea that the reality is hitting him in the face that he's in the thick of the competition, if nothing else. 41% said Felipe Franks, and then other was 4%. It really just really good comments on the feedback. And we already mentioned a couple of those earlier. One for Zaire, he mentioned kind of that he's not coming in here if he's not at least semi-assured to start. And that was Dan at Gator Bulldog ATC. He's an athletic trainer that used to work for the team and does done work for Mississippi State. He says Zaire will be quarterback one. Just think Mac will go the safe route. And it may be too much for Felipe Franks to start in Jerry World. And Zaire probably didn't come to sit behind a redshirt freshman. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And then on the other hand, Andres Rodriguez says, I think Franks, because of the time he has spent with the playbook, and it's good for Florida to have this problem. And I do agree with that, things are improving from a depth perspective, if nothing else. So, yeah, I think that most people kind of feel right now, and it is still new, that Zaire is probably going to be the guy. I kind of agree with you right now, at least for game one. Moving forward beyond that, one other comment, Wes at Wes Yount, he said Franks will start with a leash. Well, maybe Zaire will have that same leash. Maybe McElwain wants to see who has a hot hand. We haven't seen him take that approach yet, but it could happen.
And Bill, I think, I know the question was who starts. I think there's still a very good chance both play in that game.
Yeah, it is very possible, especially if they feel like they can keep teams off balance. But the key is going to be, I think we all have talked about the upside we see in Zaire. We've got to see Frank show the capability to have difference-making upside. Yeah. Even if he is a little raw, even if he is maybe not the best in all aspects of Jim McElwain's offense. But I'm going to go back to that term we've been using all spring and now early as we get into summer. He's got to show that he can be part of a competitive advantage. Otherwise, you roll with the guy that does.
Bill, quick question before we go. Does the record improve with Malik Zaire? We've already sit here, and I mentioned earlier, we've told ourselves that Florida is a top 15 team. Is a top 15 team already. We kind of had high thoughts anyway. We all have already thought Florida rolls in to Dallas and beats Michigan. This was before Zaire. So, what do we see? Is it a record difference? Is it Florida wins maybe same record, but Florida wins in more dominating fashion? Or is it as simple as he makes Florida 1 or 2 wins better?
Let's look at the facts. Everybody knows I love stats. In games that Malik Zaire threw more than 10 passes, he's 3-1. He's up and down in those games. His two best games he combined for let me pull it back up here. Versus Texas and LSU, he had an 84% combined completion percentage for 409 yards and 4 touchdowns. In the 2 games he didn't do so well, one of which was a loss, it was 16 of 38 for 42%. So, yeah, he's shown some inconsistency, yet he was 3-1. He has not thrown an interception even in his low moments. Even when he was struggling, he was doing okay on the ground. His doubled his yards per carry average and combined for 105 yards in those 2 games that he struggled in. So even when he has had those inconsistent moments, he's protected the football. We have somebody coming into Gainesville that even when they're down, they're not going to be sloppy with the ball. To have that at worst as your backup quarterback is going to mean the difference. The evidence and the stats showed that Florida's quarterbacks have not gone bell to bell all season. To have that guy that can come in and not start tossing the ball to the other colored jerseys is going to win games.
And I believe 2009 it was the last season Florida has had a quarterback go, and that was Tebow's last year. And I think, he still got hurt. He got hurt against Kentucky. Luckily, Florida had a bye week the next week.
It happens.
And he probably wouldn't have played the next week if Florida had that game against. I think it was LSU, right? Florida was going to LSU the very next game, but they had the bye week before. So Florida was able to march into Baton Rouge and get a win there. But
Tebow can grow a new arm in a bye week.
Yes, he can. All right, Bill, anything else, man? We went about an hour here, and I think we've exhausted it.
Yeah, sorry for going long, everybody. One other thing. I know you have an announcement. We've got something special coming up for our listeners, but before we do that, First of all, thank you to Gatorbait.net of the 24/7 Sports Network for sharing some good inside information with us. We really appreciate you guys. Best place to post and learn the Gator inside info on the web. And we have a birthday shout out. James at Craven Some James turned 30 this morning. He was kind of lamenting that the end of an era. But happy birthday, buddy, and thanks for tuning in with us. And you want to tell them about our announcement?
Yeah. But before, speaking of birthdays, mine was yesterday. We recorded this on Sunday, so
happy birthday, Dave!
Yep, I just turned 34 as well, or 34. So, those years are counting up a little bit. So, but yeah, the announcement. We've teamed up with Mission Belt. You can go to their website, missionbelt.com. They have some Florida Gator belts that I've had one for a couple of years now, and probably pretty much the best Gator belt you can buy there. They gave us a few to give out to our listeners. So I'll tweet out a link of the show, and sometime this week, when you guys share the show, and we'll pick a random winner of guys who share the show, and we'll send you a Florida Gators belt from Mission Belt. You can go to, like I mentioned, you can go to their website at missionbelt.com and see the quality there. It's the best belt you will get. It's kind of custom fit. It fits you no matter what size you are. There's no holes in the belt. It's pretty fashionable belt out there, and very, very, very high quality. So as like I mentioned, we got a few belts. We'll give one away for this episode, and then you can stay tuned and for Gators Breakdown, and we'll give some more away. We'll have 2 more to give away after that. But that's a thank you to our listeners out there who have helped us grow so much here at Gators Breakdown.
Yeah, please like and rate the show on iTunes and share it on Twitter. And please follow us at Real B Sykes. What's yours, Dave?
At GatorDave_SEC, and Joey, who had to leave us. Life gets in the way sometimes, folks. So we do this, but we have lives as well. But you can find Joey on Twitter at JoeyV_SEC Sports. Bill, that's about it, my friend, right?
Yeah, that's it, guys. Go Gators, and I'll be back to Florida soon, coming this fall.
That's right. Bill's moving back to Jacksonville. So exciting times there. We'll definitely have to have a big Gators Breakdown gathering.
That's right. Thanks as always, Dave. And thank you guys for all the support.
Yeah, thank you guys out there. This has been Gators Breakdown, talking about Malik Zaire coming to Florida.